The champagne glass shattered. Not dropped, thrown. Hard enough that crystal shards skittered across the marble floor of Castellano's, the kind of upscale restaurant where a single entree cost more than Ethan Cole made in a day. He froze mid-step, the tray of appetizers balanced on his palm suddenly feeling like dead weight as every head in the dining room turned toward table 12. "I said I'm not interested in your Lake Tahoe property, Richard." The woman's voice cut through the expensive silence like a blade, controlled, but trembling at the edges. Ethan's eyes found her immediately. Emerald dress. Dark hair falling in waves over bare shoulders. And a smile so brittle it looked like it might crack her face in half. Across from her, a man in a suit that probably cost more than Ethan's rent leaned forward. Meaty hands spread across the white tablecloth like he owned it. Like he owned her. "Come on, Lila, don't be dramatic," the man, Richard, said, loud enough for half the restaurant to hear. His grin was all teeth, no warmth. "You're upset about the merger. I get it. But throwing glasses? That's beneath you." The woman, Lila, looked like she wanted to throw something else. Preferably at his head. Every instinct Ethan had developed over 8 years of single fatherhood started screaming. He knew that look. He'd seen it on his daughter Sophie's face when the kids at school cornered her about why she didn't have a mom. Trapped. Desperate. Trying not to show it. Hey there, beautiful souls. Welcome back to the channel. Or if this is your first time here, welcome to the family. Before we dive deep into Ethan's story tonight, I want to know where in the world you are watching from. Drop your city or country in the comments below. I love seeing how far these stories travel. And hey, if you haven't subscribed yet, what are you waiting for? Hit that subscribe button because you're going to want to see how this unfolds. Trust me, this one's special. Now, back to the story. Ethan set the appetizer tray down at table 7 with practiced efficiency, his mind already working the angles. Michael, the head waiter, would have his ass if he caused a scene. Castellano's didn't tolerate drama, especially not from the help. But Ethan had been working double shifts for 3 months straight, pulling waiter duty here 4 nights a week and construction gigs during the day. Also, Sophie could stay in her school, keep her friends, have some semblance of stability after everything they'd been through. He couldn't afford to lose this job. But he also couldn't walk away from someone who needed help. "Sir." A crystalline voice interrupted his internal debate. "Excuse me, sir." Table 12. The woman, Lila, had her hand raised, her eyes locked on him like he was a life raft in open water. Up close, she was even more striking. But it wasn't her beauty that made Ethan's breath catch. It was the fear flickering behind those carefully composed features. The way her other hand gripped the edge of the table, knuckles white. Richard turned, irritation flashing across his fleshy face. "We're fine here, buddy. We didn't call you over." "I did," Lila said, her voice steady now, though Ethan could see the pulse hammering in her throat. "I need to speak with the waiter. Privately." "Lila. Now." Ethan stepped forward, putting himself between Lila and Richard without quite realizing he was doing it. "Is there a problem with your meal?" Her eyes met his, and something passed between them, a silent plea wrapped in desperation. "Yes," she said slowly. "A significant problem. I need to speak with you in the kitchen. Immediately." Richard's face went red. "Are you seriously?" "The customer is always right," Ethan said, the words tasting like ash. This was it. This was probably career suicide. Michael was going to kill him. But the way Lila was looking at him, the barely concealed panic in her breathing. He'd seen that same look in the mirror 2 years ago, the night Sophie's mom walked out and never came back. Some people needed saving. He extended his hand. "If you'll follow me." Lila stood so fast her chair scraped against the floor. Her hand found his, soft, trembling, and cold despite the warmth of the restaurant. Richard lurched to his feet, his bulk making the fine china rattle. "You can't just walk away from me," Richard snarled, grabbing for Lila's wrist. Ethan's free hand shot out, catching Richard's arm before he could make contact. The dining room went silent. Every eye was on them now, an audience of Seattle's elite watching the help manhandle one of their own. "Sir," Ethan said quietly, his construction-hardened grip firm on Richard's wrist, "the lady asked to speak with me. Unless you'd like me to call security." For 3 heartbeats, Richard looked like he might swing. His jaw clenched, eyes bulging with the kind of rage that came from never being told no. Then his gaze flickered around the room, registering all the phones pointed their direction, all the witnesses. He yanked his arm free. "You have no idea who you're messing with," he hissed. "Either of you." Ethan guided Lila toward the kitchen, his heart hammering against his ribs. Her hand still gripped his like he was the only solid thing in a tilting world. Behind them, Richard's voice rose, demanding to speak with the manager, threatening lawsuits, throwing around names that probably meant something to people who ran in those circles. The kitchen doors swung shut, muffling the chaos. Lila pulled her hand free and pressed it against her chest, breathing hard. This close, under the harsh fluorescent lights, Ethan could see the telltale shimmer of unshed tears in her eyes, the smudged mascara she'd been hiding with careful angles. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you, I couldn't." He wouldn't listen, and I tried to leave but he kept. The words tumbled out faster, her composure cracking. "I'm sorry, I didn't mean to get you in trouble, I just needed." "Hey!" Ethan's voice softened, the same tone he used when Sophie woke up from nightmares. "You're okay. You're safe. That guy's not getting past those doors." She laughed, a broken sound. "You don't know Richard Thornton. He gets past every door." "Not this one." Ethan grabbed a clean towel from the stack by the sink, running it under cold water. "Here. For you." He gestured at his own face. Lila took the towel, dabbing at her eyes. Her hands had stopped shaking. "You're going to get fired for this." "Probably." The reality of what he'd just done was starting to sink in. Michael was going to lose his mind. Ethan might have just torched his best-paying gig for a woman whose name he didn't even know until 5 minutes ago. But looking at the relief flooding Lila's features, the way her shoulders finally relaxed, the grateful smile breaking across her face like sunrise, he couldn't bring himself to regret it. "I'm Lila," she said softly. "Lila Montgomery." "Ethan Cole." He paused. "Listen, there's a back exit through the storage room. I can show you out before that guy realizes what's happening. You got someone you can call? Someone to make sure you get home safe?" Something flickered in her expression. Surprise, maybe, or something deeper. She studied him like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve. "You're not going to ask why I was having dinner with him? Why I didn't just leave?" "None of my business." Ethan shrugged. "You wanted out. That's all that matters. Most people would want the story. I'm not most people." He managed a tired smile. "I'm a single dad who works 2 jobs and hasn't had a full night's sleep in 8 years. Trust me, I've got enough stories of my own." Lila laughed again, and this time it sounded real. Warm. The kind of laugh that made something in Ethan's chest tighten in a way he hadn't felt in years. Not since before Sophie, before the divorce, before everything fell apart. "The back exit sounds perfect," she said. Ethan led her through the maze of the kitchen, past the line cooks who pretended not to stare, past the dishwasher station where Jorge gave him a sympathetic grimace. The storage room smelled like cardboard and produce, a jarring contrast to the restaurant's carefully curated ambience. "This door leads to the alley," Ethan explained, pushing the heavy metal door open. Cool Seattle night air rushed in, carrying the scent of rain and distant Puget Sound. "Take a left, walk 2 blocks, and you'll hit Pine Street. Plenty of cabs there." Lila stepped into the threshold, then turned back. In the dim light spilling from the storage room, she looked different, younger, more vulnerable. Nothing like the polished woman who'd been sitting at table 12. "I owe you," she said. "Seriously. Can I get your number? I want to make this up to you. Especially if you lose your job." Warning bells went off in Ethan's head. She seemed sweet, genuine even, but he'd learned the hard way not to get involved. Single dad. 2 jobs. A daughter who needed stability, Not her father chasing after beautiful women who'd forget his name by morning. "Don't worry about it," he said. "Just get home safe, okay?" "Ethan." "Cole." Michael's voice exploded from the kitchen, sharp enough to make them both jump. "What the hell is going on out there? Richard Thornton is threatening to sue the restaurant." Lila's eyes went wide. "I should explain. I can tell them." "Go," Ethan said firmly. "I'll handle it." She hesitated one more second, those dark eyes searching his face like she was trying to memorize it. Then she slipped into the alley and disappeared into the Seattle night. Ethan let the door swing shut and turned to face the firing squad. He didn't know her last name meant anything. Didn't know Montgomery was synonymous with real estate empires and family scandals splashed across Forbes covers. Didn't know that the woman he'd just helped escape was worth more money than he'd earn in 10 lifetimes. Didn't know she was already falling for him. All he knew was that Michael looked ready to murder him. He was probably about to lose his job, and Sophie's tuition payment was due in 2 weeks. Just another Thursday night in Ethan Cole's life. But as he walked toward his furious boss, he couldn't quite shake the memory of Lila's smile, or the way her hand had felt in his. Like maybe, for just a moment, he'd been someone's hero instead of just someone's waiter. Michael didn't fire him. Somehow, maybe because Castellanos didn't want the publicity. Maybe because Richard Thornton stormed out before he could make good on his threats. Ethan walked out of the restaurant that night with his job intact. Barely. Michael's parting words still echoed in his ears as he rode the bus home at midnight. "One more incident, Cole. One more, and I don't care how good you are with difficult customers." The apartment was dark when he unlocked the door, but a strip of light glowed beneath Sophie's bedroom door. Ethan smiled despite his exhaustion. Past bedtime again. He knocked softly. "Soph? You better be sleeping in there." Rustling sounds, a thump, then his daughter's voice, pitched high with false innocence. "I am sleeping." "Uh-huh." Ethan pushed the door open. Sophie sat cross-legged on her bed, still fully dressed, a book spread across her lap and her reading lamp bent close. Her dark curls, so much like her mother's it sometimes hurt to look at her, were escaping from a lopsided ponytail. "That's a weird way to sleep, kiddo." "I was having a reading dream," Sophie said solemnly. 8 years old and already too clever for her own good. Ethan sat on the edge of her bed, the familiar springs creaking under his weight. The room was small. They were always small in the places he could afford, but Sophie had made it hers. Drawings covered every wall, taped up in layers. Horses and princesses and increasingly ambitious attempts at portraits. A mobile made from origami cranes, a project from her after-school program, spun slowly above her bed. "What are we reading tonight?" He tilted the book toward him. "Bridge to Terabithia." His chest tightened. He remembered this one. Remembered the ending. "It's really good, Dad." Sophie's eyes shone with that particular intensity she got when she loved something. "Jess and Leslie are best friends and they made this whole secret kingdom in the woods, and nobody knows about it but them." And, she caught herself, suddenly suspicious. "Wait, have you read this?" "Long time ago." "Don't tell me what happens." She slammed the book shut protectively. "Mrs. Chen says the best part of reading is not knowing." Mrs. Chen. The after-school coordinator who watched Sophie until Ethan could pick her up at 6, before his evening shift started. One of about a dozen people currently holding Ethan's life together through sheer goodwill. "Mrs. Chen is a smart lady," Ethan said. "But you know what else is smart? Sleep. It's a school night, Soph." Sophie's face fell into the exaggerated pout she'd perfected around age 5. "But I'm at the good part." "The good part will still be there tomorrow." Ethan took the book, marked her page with the scrap of ribbon she used as a bookmark, and set it on her nightstand. "You've got that math test tomorrow, remember?" "I studied. Jorge helped me with fractions." Something warm unfurled in Ethan's chest. Jorge, the dishwasher at Castellanos, had a degree in engineering from Colombia that didn't transfer to the States. 3 times a week, he video-called Sophie and walked her through her homework while Ethan worked the dinner shift. Another piece of the fragile ecosystem keeping them afloat. "Jorge's the best," Ethan said. Did you thank him? I drew him a picture of his cat. Sophie burrowed under her covers, finally cooperating. The one he's always showing me photos of. Mr. Whiskers. He's gonna love that. Ethan tucked the blanket around her shoulders, the same ritual they'd performed every night for 8 years. 8 years since her mother left, since Ethan's whole world condensed down to this. A too-small apartment, impossible schedules, and a little girl who deserved so much more than he could give her. Dad. Sophie's voice went quiet. Did something happen at work tonight? You look sad. Ethan's throat tightened. Sophie had always been perceptive, even as a baby. She'd known her mother was leaving before Ethan did, had clung to him for days before Rachel finally packed her bags and admitted she couldn't do it anymore. Couldn't handle motherhood, marriage, the suffocating weight of normal life. She'd needed to find herself, she'd said. Last he heard, she was finding herself in Portland with a yoga instructor named Sage. She hadn't called Sophie in 14 months. Not sad, Ethan said, smoothing Sophie's hair back from her forehead. Just tired. And thinking about how lucky I am. Lucky? Sophie wrinkled her nose. We're not lucky. Lucky people have big houses and go on vacation. Tommy Brennan went to Disneyland. Tommy Brennan doesn't have you. Ethan tapped her nose gently. So I'm definitely luckier. Sophie giggled, then yawned wide enough to crack her jaw. That's corny, Dad. Dads are supposed to be corny. It's in the rule book. There's no rule book for dads. Sure there is. Rule number 1. Embarrass your kid whenever possible. Rule number 2. Make terrible jokes. Rule number 3. He paused, his voice softening. Love them more than anything else in the world. Sophie's eyes were already drooping, her breathing evening out. Love you too, Daddy, she mumbled. Ethan sat there until her breathing deepened into sleep, watching the rise and fall of her small chest. This was why he'd grabbed Richard Thornton's wrist tonight. Why he'd risked his job for a stranger. Because he was raising a daughter in a world full of men like that. Men who thought money and power meant they could take whatever they wanted, that no was just an opening negotiation. He wanted Sophie to grow up knowing that wasn't true. That there were still people who'd help, even when it cost them. Even if it meant he'd have to pull extra construction shifts to make up for lost tips if Castellanos cut his hours. His phone buzzed as he stepped into the hallway. Probably Jorge, checking that he'd survived Michael's wrath. But the notification made him freeze. Facebook friend request, Lila Montgomery. His finger hovered over the notification. How had she found him? He'd only told her his first name. Then again, how many Ethan Coles worked at Castellanos? Probably not hard if you knew where to look. He clicked through to her profile, and his stomach dropped. The photos were locked down tight, privacy settings maxed out, but her profile picture showed her laughing, windswept, standing on what looked like the deck of a yacht. And her work information, listed publicly, Montgomery Holdings, Seattle, WA. Montgomery Holdings. The real estate company with their logo on half the new condos sprouting up around Seattle like glass and steel weeds. The company whose CEO had been involved in some kind of scandal last year. Something about embezzlement and family infighting that dominated the local news for weeks. That Montgomery? If you're loving this story so far, do me a favor and drop a comment below. Tell me, what would you have done in Ethan's position? Would you accept the friend request? Let me know your thoughts. Ethan stared at the friend request for a long moment. This woman wasn't just out of his league. She existed in a completely different stratosphere. What did she want? To thank him? Assuage her guilt? Slum it with the working class for a few weeks before returning to her yacht parties and charity galas? He'd seen this movie before. Rich girl, poor guy, temporary fascination that ended the moment reality intruded. Rachel had come from money too. Not Montgomery money, but enough. Enough that her parents had spent 3 years trying to convince her to leave him, to stop wasting her potential on a construction worker with no degree and no prospects. Eventually, they'd succeeded. He wasn't doing that again. Wasn't letting Sophie get attached to someone who'd leave when things got complicated. His daughter had already lost one mother. She didn't need to watch her father get his heart broken by someone who'd forget them both the moment something shinier came along. Ethan deleted the friend request. Then he deleted the notification, like he could delete the memory of Lila's hand in his. The way she'd looked at him like he was something more than just the help. He had a daughter to raise. 2 jobs to juggle. A life that barely held together on the best days. He didn't have room for beautiful women with secrets and sad eyes. Even if part of him, the part that hadn't felt anything for anyone in 2 years, was already wondering if he'd just made a terrible mistake. The construction site the next morning was chaos. Ethan pulled on his hard hat and gloves, his body protesting every movement. 4 hours of sleep. Again. He'd been running on fumes for so long he barely remembered what rested felt like. Cole, need you on the beam work today. His foreman, Danny Castellano, no relation to the restaurant, despite Ethan's initial confusion when he'd gotten hired, waved him over to where the skeleton of the new building reached toward the sky. Rodriguez called in sick. Beam work. Great. Ethan's least favorite task. Walking steel girders 10 stories up with nothing but a harness and a prayer. But it paid an extra $2 an hour, and Sophie's school was doing a field trip to the science center next month. $45 he didn't have. On it, Ethan called back. As he climbed, the city spread out below him, Seattle in all its contradictions. Glass towers and tent cities. Tech money and grinding poverty. Somewhere out there, Lila Montgomery was probably in a boardroom or a penthouse, living a life he couldn't even imagine. And he was exactly where he belonged. 1 missed step from falling, 1 paycheck from catastrophe, 1 sick day from losing everything. But when he reached the top beam and looked out over the city, the wind sharp against his face and the morning sun breaking through the clouds, Ethan felt something he rarely let himself feel anymore. Hope. Maybe it was helping Lila last night. Maybe it was watching Sophie sleep, safe and loved. Maybe it was just exhaustion-induced delirium. But for one moment, balanced between sky and earth, Ethan Cole let himself believe that things might actually get better. He had no idea how right he was, or how complicated better was about to become. Sophie's school called at 1:47 p.m. Ethan's heart stopped the second he saw the number. Schools didn't call in the middle of the day unless something was wrong. He yanked off his work gloves, nearly dropping his phone in his haste to answer. Mr. Cole. The school secretary's voice was calm, which meant it wasn't the hospital. Not an injury. Ethan's racing heart slowed fractionally. Sophie's fine, but we need you to come pick her up. What happened? She got into an altercation with another student. Principal Winters would like to speak with you. An altercation. Sophie, who cried when she accidentally stepped on ants, who made him carry spiders outside instead of killing them, had gotten into a fight? 20 minutes later, Ethan pushed through the doors of Riverside Elementary still covered in construction dust, panic and confusion warring in his chest. He found Sophie sitting on the bench outside the principal's office, her arms crossed, her jaw set in that stubborn way that meant she wasn't sorry. Her lip was bleeding. Sophie. Ethan dropped to his knees in front of her, tilting her chin up. Baby, what happened? Are you hurt? I'm fine. But her voice wobbled. You should see Tommy Brennan. You hit Tommy Brennan. Ethan's mind reeled. Tommy was the kid who'd gone to Disneyland, the one Sophie had mentioned last night. Why would you? He said you were a loser. Sophie's eyes filled with tears, but her jaw stayed firm. He said his dad said that people who work 2 jobs are losers who can't get real careers. And that's why we live in a small apartment and I don't have a mom. And, her voice broke. I told him to take it back and he wouldn't. So I pushed him, and he pushed me back, and then I hit him. The world tilted sideways. Ethan pulled Sophie into his arms, feeling her small body shake with suppressed sobs. Over her shoulder, he saw Principal Winters standing in the doorway, sympathy and exasperation mixing on her face. Mr. Cole, she said quietly, let's talk in my office. The conversation was brief and humiliating. 3-day suspension for Sophie. A formal apology required. Tommy's parents were considering their options, which was rich parent code for "we might sue you into oblivion." Ethan apologized, promised it wouldn't happen again, and guided Sophie out to the parking lot where his battered Honda waited. His daughter hadn't said a word since leaving the principal's office, just stared at her shoes with that devastating expression kids got when they realized the world was fundamentally unfair. "Hey!" Ethan opened the car door, but didn't let her get in yet. "Look at me, Soph." She raised her eyes, still defiant despite the tears tracking through the dust on her cheeks. "You can't hit people," Ethan said firmly, "even when they say terrible things. Understand?" Sophie nodded miserably. "But for the record." Ethan's voice softened. "I'm really proud of you for defending our family." Sophie's face crumpled. She threw her arms around his waist, and Ethan held her while she cried in the school parking lot, both of them covered in dust and failure. He'd never felt more like he was drowning. The coffee shop where Ethan took Sophie was a small place 3 blocks from their apartment, the kind where the barista knew his order and didn't judge when he paid in quarters. Sophie sat across from him in their usual corner booth, working her way through a hot chocolate with extra marshmallows, the universal balm for 8-year-old heartbreak. "I'm sorry I got in trouble," she said quietly. "I know, kiddo." "Are you mad?" Ethan sighed, scrubbing his hand over his face. "No, I'm not mad. Tired, scared, wondering how he was going to make up 3 days of after-school care on his already impossible budget. But not mad. I just wish." "Ethan." He looked up, and his entire world screeched to a halt. Lila Montgomery stood 3 feet from their table, and she looked nothing like the polished woman from Castellanos. She wore jeans, actual jeans, designer probably, but still, and an oversized sweater, her hair pulled back in a simple ponytail. No makeup that he could see. No jewelry except small silver earrings. She looked real. Approachable. More beautiful than he remembered. Lila's eyes went from Ethan to Sophie, surprise flickering across her face. "I'm sorry, I don't mean to interrupt. I just saw you through the window and wanted to say thank you. For the other night." Ethan's brain had stopped forming coherent thoughts. What are you doing here?" "I live 2 blocks away." She gestured vaguely north. "This is my regular coffee shop. I come here every Friday too." She trailed off, seeming to realize how that sounded. "I mean, I'm not stalking you. This is genuinely a coincidence." Sophie's eyes ping-ponged between them, fascination replacing her earlier misery. "Dad? Who's this?" "A customer," Ethan said quickly. "From the restaurant." "Lila, this is my daughter, Sophie." "Sophie, this is Ms. Montgomery." "Just Lila is fine." Lila's smile transformed her entire face as she looked at Sophie. "Hi, Sophie. That's a beautiful name." "It means wisdom," Sophie said, perking up the way she always did when she got to share that particular fact. "My dad picked it." "Then your dad has excellent taste." Lila's eyes flicked back to Ethan, something unreadable in their depths. "I tried to friend you on Facebook. You didn't accept." Sophie gasped. "Dad, that's so rude." Heat crept up Ethan's neck. I didn't think it was appropriate. You're a customer." "Is that really why?" Lila asked softly. The question hung between them, loaded with meaning. Because no, that wasn't really why. The real reason was sitting in front of him with a split lip and suspension papers. A daily reminder of what happened when Ethan let himself want things he couldn't have. "Can I sit?" Lila asked, and before Ethan could formulate a polite refusal, Sophie was scooting over in the booth, making room. "You can sit by me. Dad's covered in dirt anyway." "Sophie. It's true. You need a shower." Sophie turned to Lila with that fearless friendliness that terrified Ethan on a regular basis. "Do you like hot chocolate? They make the best hot chocolate here. The marshmallows are the mini ones, which are superior to regular marshmallows in every way." Lila laughed, sliding into the booth. "I absolutely agree. Mini marshmallows are underrated." "Right." Sophie was fully animated now, suspension forgotten. Dad always gets the regular ones at home because they're cheaper, but I keep telling him it's not about the price, it's about the marshmallow to chocolate ratio. Your daughter is wise beyond her years, Lila said to Ethan, her eyes dancing with amusement. Ethan felt control of the situation slipping away. We should actually get going. Sophie's had a rough day, and I need to get back to work. I got suspended, Sophie announced, apparently over any shame about the incident. For 3 days. I punched Tommy Brennan because he called my dad a loser. Lila's smile faded. Someone said that. His dad said it first, probably. Tommy's dad is always saying mean things about people. My dad says it's because he's insecure, but I think it's because he's just mean. Sophie took a loud slurp of her hot chocolate. Anyway, I shouldn't have hit him, but I'm not sorry I defended Dad. He works really hard. Something shifted in Lila's expression, a flash of pain, quickly hidden. You're lucky to have each other, she said quietly. An awkward silence fell. Ethan wanted to leave, to extract himself and Sophie from this surreal situation before it got more complicated. But something kept him frozen in place. The way Lila was looking at Sophie, like she was seeing something precious and fragile. The way Sophie had already gravitated toward her, starved for female attention in a life that had been just her and Ethan for so long. The other night, Lila said, turning to Ethan, I wanted to explain. You don't owe me an explanation. I know, but I want to give you one anyway. She took a breath. That man, Richard Thornton, he's on my company's board of directors. That dinner was supposed to be about business, about a merger we're considering. But he's been persistent about making it personal. My family thought if I just had dinner with him, heard him out, it would smooth over some political complications. Your family made you go on a date with that creep. Sophie looked outraged. Sophie, Ethan warned. It's okay, Lila said. She's not wrong. He is a creep. And yes, my family has very strong opinions about what I should do with my life. Who I should spend time with. What's appropriate for someone in my position. Her voice hardened on that last word. I've spent the last year doing everything they wanted. Smiling for the cameras, dating the right people, rebuilding our reputation after my father's scandal. And that night, sitting across from Richard while he talked about property portfolios and looked at me like I was another asset to acquire, I couldn't do it anymore. She met Ethan's eyes, and he saw the same desperation he'd glimpsed at the restaurant. The trapped, drowning look of someone suffocating under expectations. Then you appeared, Lila continued. And you didn't ask who I was or what you'd get out of helping me. You just helped. Do you know how rare that is in my world? Ethan's throat was tight. Anyone would have. No, they wouldn't have. Lila's voice was fierce. Most people see the name Montgomery and they want something. Money, connections, access. But you deleted my friend request. You didn't even Google me, did you? I saw your company name. That was enough. Why was it enough? Because I can't afford to want you, Ethan thought. Because my daughter is already looking at you like you hung the moon. And when you leave, not if, when, it'll break her heart almost as much as mine. Because we're from different worlds, he said instead. And mixing those worlds never ends well. Trust me. Lila flinched like he'd slapped her. So that's it? One good deed and then goodbye forever. Dad, Sophie whispered, tugging his sleeve. Don't be rude. But before Ethan could respond, Lila's phone buzzed. She glanced at the screen and her face went pale. I have to go, she said abruptly, standing. My brother, there's a situation at the office. She looked at Ethan, something desperate and determined in her eyes. Can I see you again? Please? I know you think I'm just some rich girl playing pretend, but I'm not. And I'd really like the chance to prove that. Ethan opened his mouth to say no, to protect himself and Sophie from the inevitable heartbreak. Yes, Sophie said loudly. He would love to see you again. He never goes on dates because he's always working, and he's lonely even though he pretends he's not. Sophie. But Lila was smiling again, hope lighting her face like dawn. Tomorrow? There's a food truck festival in Pike Place. Very public, very casual. Bring Sophie. Every instinct Ethan had screamed at him to refuse. This was a mistake. A beautiful, tempting, catastrophic mistake. Okay, he heard himself say. Tomorrow. Lila's smile could have powered the city. She scribbled her number on a napkin, who carried a pen anymore, and pressed it into his hand. Her fingers lingered against his palm for just a second, warm and real. Thank you, she whispered. For the other night. And for this. Then she was gone, disappearing into the Seattle afternoon like maybe she'd been a dream all along. Sophie turned to Ethan with the smuggest expression an 8-year-old had ever worn. Dad. She's pretty. And she likes mini marshmallows. You have to marry her. We're going on one food truck outing, Soph. This isn't. Ethan dragged his hand through his hair. This is a terrible idea. Or, Sophie said, it's the best idea ever and you're just scared. Out of the mouths of babes. Ethan looked at the napkin in his hand, Lila's number written in elegant script, and wondered what the hell he'd just agreed to. He didn't know about the photographers who'd been following Lila all week, documenting her every move. Didn't know that her family was about to implode spectacularly, or that she was on the verge of losing everything that mattered. Didn't know that saying yes to tomorrow would drag him into a world of corporate espionage, family betrayal, and secrets that could destroy them both. All he knew was that for the first time in 2 years, he was looking forward to something that wasn't just survival. And that terrified him more than any construction beam ever had. Pike Place Market on a Saturday afternoon was controlled chaos, tourists and locals weaving between flower stalls and fishmongers, the air thick with the smell of fresh bread and salt water. Ethan held Sophie's hand as they navigated the crowd, his eyes scanning for Lila. He'd almost cancelled 3 times. Talked himself into it, then out of it, then back in again. Even now, standing in the middle of Seattle's most famous market with his daughter bouncing excitedly beside him, part of him wanted to run. Do you see her? Sophie stood on her tiptoes, craning her neck. She'd insisted on wearing her fancy dress, the blue one with sunflowers that she saved for special occasions, and had made Ethan change shirts twice before approving his outfit. What if she forgot? Then we eat some good food and go home, Ethan said. It's not a big deal. It was absolutely a big deal. He'd woken up at 5 a.m. after barely sleeping, his stomach in knots. Had gotten to the construction site early to finish his shift, then spent an hour getting the dust and grime off before picking up Sophie. He couldn't remember the last time he'd been this nervous. Ethan. He turned, and his breath caught. Lila wove through the crowd toward them, and she looked nothing like a millionaire heiress. Sundress, denim jacket, canvas sneakers. Her hair was loose around her shoulders, and she carried a vintage camera around her neck. No entourage, no bodyguards, no visible signs of wealth except maybe the camera, which looked expensive. You came, she said, slightly breathless. Her smile was incandescent. I was worried you'd change your mind. Sophie wouldn't let me, Ethan admitted. Smart girl. Lila dropped to Sophie's level. I love your dress. Those sunflowers are perfect. Sophie beamed. Dad said it was too fancy for a food truck thing, but I told him you can never be too fancy. Your dad doesn't know what he's talking about, Lila stage whispered. Between you and me, I think he could use some fashion advice. Hey, Ethan protested, fighting a smile. I'm right here. We know, they said in unison, then dissolved into giggles. Something in Ethan's chest cracked open. Watching Lila with Sophie, seeing how naturally she engaged with his daughter, no condescension, no awkwardness, made him want things he'd sworn off. Made him remember what it felt like to imagine a future that was more than just survival. Dangerous territory. So, Lila said, standing and linking her arm through Sophie's like they were old friends. I've scoped out the situation. We've got Thai, Mexican, Korean barbecue, and something called a waffle abomination that I desperately need to try. What's our strategy? Get one of everything and share, Sophie said immediately. That way we maximize our food experience. See, this is why I like you. You think strategically. Lila glanced at Ethan. Is she always this brilliant? Pretty much, Ethan said, warmth flooding through him. It's exhausting. They started at the Thai truck, ordering pad Thai and spring rolls that they ate standing up, juggling plates and napkins. Lila had a smudge of peanut sauce on her cheek, and when Ethan reached out instinctively to wipe it away, the moment froze. His thumb against her skin, her eyes widening, the world narrowing to just the two of them. You had. His voice came out rough. Sauce. Thanks, Lila whispered. Sophie cleared her throat dramatically. Are you guys gonna be weird all day? Because I'm trying to eat here. The spell broke. Lila laughed, stepping back, and Ethan shoved his hands in his pockets before he did something stupid. They moved through the festival like that, eating, talking, laughing. Sophie chatted endlessly about school and her books and the injustice of Tommy Brennan's existence. Lila listened like every word mattered, asking questions, sharing stories from her own childhood. I went to boarding school in Switzerland, she said, splitting a waffle monstrosity with Sophie. Sounds fancy, right? But mostly it was lonely. I was this awkward kid who'd rather read than ski, and everyone else had known each other for years. Did you have friends? Sophie asked. A few. But my best friend was actually the librarian, Mrs. Chen. She stopped, laughing at Sophie's expression. What? My after-school teacher is Mrs. Chen. Sophie bounced excitedly. That's so weird. What are the chances? It's a common name, Ethan said, but he was smiling too. The coincidence felt like a sign, though he didn't believe in signs. Mrs. Chen let me hide in the library when things got bad. Lila continued, something darker crossing her face. When my parents were fighting, or when my brother was being investigated, or when the tabloids were camped outside our house. Books were my escape. Mine too, Sophie breathed. What's your favorite? The Secret Garden. What's yours? Bridge to Terabithia. I'm reading it right now, and Dad won't tell me the ending even though he's read it. Lila's eyes met Ethan's over Sophie's head, understanding passing between them. She knew that book, knew what was coming. Your dad's a good man, Lila said softly. I know, Sophie said simply. He's the best. Ethan had to look away before the emotion spilling through him became visible. Quick question for all you incredible people watching. What's the book or movie that shaped your childhood? Drop it in the comments. And if you're not subscribed yet, hit that button. This story's about to get intense, and you won't want to miss what happens next. They were at the Korean barbecue truck when things went sideways. Ethan noticed the man first, expensive suit, camera with a telephoto lens, hanging back but definitely watching them. Then he spotted another one. And another. Lila, he said quietly. Don't look now, but I think someone's taking pictures. Lila's face went pale. Damn it. I thought I'd lost them. Lost who? Paparazzi. She said it like a curse word. They've been following me since the merger news broke. I've been so careful, but they must have. She stopped, realization dawning. The coffee shop yesterday. They probably followed me, saw us together. Ethan's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means by tomorrow morning, we'll be all over the tabloids. Mystery man spotted with Montgomery heiress. They'll dig into your life, find out everything about you. Her voice shook. I'm so sorry. I should have warned you. I should have been more careful. Dad. Sophie tugged his sleeve, fear creeping into her voice. Why are those men taking pictures of us? Before Ethan could answer, one of the photographers pushed closer, his camera clicking rapidly. Lila. Lila Montgomery. Who's your new boyfriend? Is this a rebound from Richard Thornton? Other photographers materialized like sharks sensing blood. Tourists stopped to stare. Sophie pressed against Ethan's side, overwhelmed by the sudden attention. We need to go, Ethan said, his protective instincts kicking into overdrive. He scooped Sophie into his arms even though she was really too big for it, using his body to shield her from the cameras. This way. Lila grabbed his elbow, steering them through the crowd. She moved with practiced efficiency, knowing exactly where to turn, which alleys to take. They emerged 3 blocks away, breathing hard, the sounds of the market fading behind them. Ethan set Sophie down carefully. His daughter's eyes were huge, her earlier joy completely evaporated. "I'm sorry," Lila said again, and she looked devastated. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to drag you into this circus." "It's fine," Ethan said, but it wasn't fine. This was exactly what he'd been afraid of. Lila's world crashing into his, bringing chaos and attention and complications he couldn't afford. "It's not fine." Lila's hands were shaking. "Those photos will be everywhere. They'll find out where you work, where you live. They'll harass you for comments, make up stories if they can't get real ones." And Sophie, she looked at his daughter with genuine anguish. "God, Sophie, I never wanted to scare you." "I'm not scared," Sophie said, which was clearly a lie. "Just confused. Why do they care who Dad dates?" "Because my family is complicated," Lila said carefully. "And right now, anything I do is news. Which is stupid and invasive and I hate it, but it's my reality." She turned to Ethan. "I understand if you want to walk away. If this is too much, I wouldn't blame you." Ethan should have said yes. Should have taken the out she was offering, gone back to his small, contained, manageable life. But he kept thinking about Lila in the restaurant, trapped at that table with Richard Thornton. Kept seeing the joy on her face when she'd spotted them at the market, the way she'd lit up around Sophie. She was drowning in her own life just like he was drowning in his, just in a completely different ocean. "What if we didn't walk away?" he heard himself say. Lila's head snapped up. "What?" "Those photographers already got their pictures. The damage is done, right? So walking away now doesn't undo it. It just means they win." He took a breath, his heart hammering. "What if we just see where this goes? Carefully, honestly. No promises, no expectations. Just 2 people getting to know each other. With 1,000,000 photographers watching our every move." Lila's voice was skeptical, but hope flickered in her eyes. "I've worked construction jobs in the rain," Ethan said. "Raised a baby alone at 22. Survived divorce and poverty and my daughter's terrible twos. I can handle some cameras." "Dad's really tough," Sophie added. "One time a nail went through his hand and he didn't even cry." "Sophie. It's true. You just said a bad word and wrapped it up and kept working." Lila laughed, the sound breaking the tension. "Okay, that's actually terrifying and impressive." "Welcome to my life," Ethan said dryly. They stood there in the alley, the 3 of them, the noise of the city humming around them. Lila looked at Ethan like he was a puzzle she couldn't quite solve, like she couldn't believe he was real. "I haven't been on a real date in 3 years, she admitted. "Every man I've met has either wanted my money or my connections. They see Montgomery Holdings before they see me. But you." She shook her head, wonder in her voice. "You deleted my friend request. You were going to walk away. Why would you give me a chance now?" "Because you're different," Ethan thought. "Because Sophie already likes you and my daughter has excellent instincts. Because when you smile at me, I feel like maybe I'm not just a collection of responsibilities and failures. Because I'm tired of being alone. Because you like mini marshmallows," he said instead. "And anyone with that kind of taste deserves a second chance." Lila's smile was sunrise and spring and every good thing Ethan had forgotten to hope for. "That's the worst reason I've ever heard. I'm full of terrible reasons. Fair warning. I'll take my chances." She stepped closer, tentative, like he might bolt. "Can I see you again? Somewhere without photographers, preferably. I'll be more careful this time." "My apartment," Sophie suggested. "We could have dinner. Dad makes really good spaghetti." "Well, it's okay spaghetti, but we have mini marshmallows for dessert." "Sophie, we can't just invite." "I would love that," Lila said softly. "If you're sure." Ethan looked at his daughter's hopeful face, at Lila's careful optimism, and felt the last of his defenses crumbling. This was reckless. Stupid. Probably going to end in disaster. But maybe, just maybe, it was also the start of something real. Tuesday night, he said. 6:30. And fair warning, the apartment's small and the neighborhood's rough, and you're going to see exactly how the other half lives. Perfect, Lila said, and meant it. As they exchanged numbers, real numbers this time, not napkin scribbles, Ethan caught sight of another photographer across the street. Telephoto lens aimed right at them. The picture that man took would be on the front page of the Seattle Times Society section by morning. Lila Montgomery, reclusive heiress, caught laughing with an unknown man and his daughter, looking happier than she'd looked in years. And in the boardroom of Montgomery Holdings, her brother would see that photo and make a decision that would change everything. But Ethan didn't know that yet. All he knew was that Tuesday suddenly felt very far away, and that he was falling for a woman who lived in a different world. A world that was about to come crashing down around both of them. The tabloid hit on Sunday morning. Ethan was making pancakes when Jorge sent him the link with 3 fire emojis and a message. Hermano, you didn't tell me you were dating royalty. The headline made his stomach turn. Montgomery heiress slumming it? Lila's mystery man revealed. Below it, a photo from Pike Place. Him wiping sauce from Lila's cheek, both of them looking at each other like nothing else existed. It should have been a private moment. Instead, it was splashed across the internet for millions to dissect. The article was worse. They'd dug up everything. His divorce, Rachel's abandonment, his 2 jobs, the size of his apartment, Sophie's school. They'd even found his arrest record from college, a drunk and disorderly charge from a party that had gotten out of hand, dismissed after community service but still there, still part of his permanent record. Sources close to the Montgomery family question what the heiress could possibly see in Ethan Cole. A twice-divorced construction worker living paycheck to paycheck, the article sneered. Is this a genuine romance? Or is Lila acting out after the Richard Thornton humiliation? Twice divorced. Ethan muttered. I've only been married once, you vultures. Dad. Sophie appeared in the kitchen doorway, still in her pajamas. Mrs. Chen texted. She saw the article. She wants to know if we're okay. Of course she had. Everyone had probably seen it by now. His co-workers, Sophie's teachers, the people at Castellanos. His private life, his struggles, his failures, all packaged up for public consumption. His phone rang. Lila. Don't read it, she said immediately when he answered. Whatever you do, don't read the article. Too late. Ethan, I'm so sorry. They had no right to dig into your past, to drag Sophie into this. Her voice broke. My lawyer's already sending cease and desist letters. We can sue for invasion of privacy, for printing false information. I don't want lawyers, Ethan said tiredly. I just want this to go away. Silence on the other end. Then, quietly, do you want me to go away? The question hung between them. It would be so easy to say yes, to retreat back into his small, invisible life where nobody cared about his past or his mistakes. But then he thought about Lila's laugh at the market. The way she'd looked at Sophie like his daughter mattered. The feeling of her skin under his thumb, warm and real and there. No, he said. I don't want that. Tuesday's still on. If you still want to come. I'll be there, Lila said, and he could hear the relief in her voice. 6:30. I'm bringing wine. We don't have wine glasses. Then I'm bringing wine and wine glasses. Despite everything, Ethan smiled. Okay. After he hung up, Sophie climbed into his lap like she used to when she was smaller. Are people being mean to you because of Lila? Some people are always mean. Soft doesn't matter why. Do you like her? Like, really like her? Ethan thought about lying, about protecting himself and Sophie from the inevitable hurt. But his daughter deserved honesty. Yeah, he admitted. I really do. Then who cares what those stupid articles say? Sophie hugged him tight. You taught me not to listen to bullies. Tommy Brennan is a bully, and those newspaper people are bullies too. Out of the mouths of babes. Tuesday arrived like a storm on the horizon, inevitable and terrifying. Ethan left his construction shift early, rushed home to clean the apartment, realized how truly shabby everything looked through the eyes of someone worth millions, and had a minor panic attack in the bathroom. "Dad!" Sophie pounded on the door. "You're being weird again. Stop it." "I'm not being weird. You cleaned the baseboards. We don't even look at the baseboards." She had a point. Ethan emerged from the bathroom to find Sophie had set the table with their mismatched plates and the cloth napkins they only used at Thanksgiving. She'd even put together a centerpiece from construction paper flowers she'd made at school. "You made flowers?" Ethan's throat tightened. "Lila likes pretty things," Sophie said matter-of-factly. "And our apartment isn't very pretty, so I'm helping." "Hey!" Ethan pulled her into a hug. "Our apartment is perfect because you're in it." "That's corny, Dad." Rule number 2, make terrible jokes. She giggled against his chest, and Ethan thought, not for the first time, that no matter what happened with Lila, he'd already won the lottery the day Sophie was born. The knock came at exactly 6:30. Ethan opened the door, and Lila stood there holding wine, a bakery box, and a bouquet of sunflowers. She wore jeans and a soft blue sweater, her hair in a braid, no makeup except maybe some lip gloss. She looked nervous. "Hi," she said. "I know you said not to bring anything, but I'm constitutionally incapable of showing up empty-handed, so I brought wine and cookies and flowers for Sophie because sunflowers." "Lila," Ethan interrupted gently. "Breathe." She took a breath. "I'm nervous. This is stupid, right? I've negotiated million-dollar deals and faced down hostile boards, but dinner at your apartment has me completely." She stopped as Sophie appeared behind Ethan. "Hi, Sophie. I brought sunflowers. I love them." Sophie grabbed the bouquet, practically vibrating with excitement. Come in. Come in. Dad made spaghetti and garlic bread and everything." The apartment was exactly as advertised. Small, shabby, furnished mostly from thrift stores and Craigslist finds. Ethan watched Lila take it all in. The water stain on the ceiling he couldn't afford to fix, the hammer-down couch, Sophie's drawings taped to every available surface because frames were expensive. "It's perfect," Lila said softly, and she sounded like she meant it. Dinner was chaotic and warm and nothing like what Ethan had imagined. Lila helped Sophie put the flowers in a vase, one of the jars they usually used for drinking, and told stories about disastrous family dinners at the Montgomery estate where servants outnumbered guests and her father would critique everyone's table manners. "One time I laughed too loud and he made me leave the table," Lila said, twirling spaghetti on her fork. "I was 12. I ate dinner in my room for a week." Sophie's eyes went wide. "That's mean. My dad says laughing is the best sound in the world." "Your dad is right." Lila's eyes met Ethan's across the table, and something passed between them, a recognition, maybe, of parallel loneliness. After dinner, Sophie showed Lila her room and her drawings and her origami cranes, chattering endlessly about school and books and her plan to become a veterinarian artist astronaut when she grew up. Lila listened to all of it, asked questions, treated Sophie's dreams like they mattered. Ethan stood in the doorway watching them, his heart doing complicated things in his chest. Honest moment, everyone. Have you ever watched someone interact with the most important person in your life and just known they were special? Hit that subscribe button and drop a comment about the moment you just knew. I love reading your stories. By 8:30, Sophie was yawning despite her protests that she wasn't tired. Ethan carried her through the bedtime routine while Lila cleaned up the kitchen. He tried to stop her, but she waved him off. When he emerged from Sophie's room, Lila was standing at the window, looking out over the neighborhood. The distant lights of downtown Seattle glittered like stars. "She's wonderful," Lila said without turning around. "You've done an incredible job raising her." "Most days I feel like I'm barely holding it together," Ethan admitted. "That's what good parents feel like. The bad ones think they're doing everything right." She turned, and in the dim light from the kitchen, she looked younger. "Vulnerable. Can I tell you something? Something I haven't told anyone." "Of course." Lila sat on the couch, and Ethan settled beside her, careful to maintain distance even though every cell in his body wanted to be closer. "My brother, James," she began. "He's the CEO of Montgomery Holdings. After my father's embezzlement scandal, James took over, and I became the public face, the one doing interviews, rebuilding our reputation, smiling for the cameras. I thought we were a team, that we were saving the company together." She took a shaky breath. "2 weeks ago, I found out he's been systematically cutting me out, moving my shares into a trust one can't access, making deals without telling me. He's planning to force me out completely, and that merger with Richard Thornton's company, that's the final piece. If it goes through, James gets majority control and I lose everything my grandfather built." Ethan's hands curled into fists. "That's legal? He can just steal your inheritance." "If I'm deemed unfit to manage my affairs, yes. And James has been building a case, planting stories about my mental health, documenting my erratic behavior, getting board members on his side." Her voice hardened. "That dinner with Richard wasn't just business. It was a test. James told the board I'd agreed to the merger, agreed to the date. When I walked out, when I made a scene, it played right into James's narrative that I'm unstable. That's why you've been so careful," Ethan realized. "The photographers, the tabloids, it's not just annoying. It's ammunition he can use against you. And now there are pictures of me with you and Sophie, articles calling me reckless, questioning my judgment." Lila's eyes filled with tears. "I'm giving him exactly what he needs. Every moment I spend with you is another nail in my coffin." The words landed like a punch. Ethan felt his walls slam back up, the familiar sting of not being enough. So this was a mistake. Getting involved with someone like me. "No." Lila grabbed his hand, fierce and desperate. "That's not what I'm saying. Being with you is the first real thing I've felt in years. You and Sophie, you remind me what actually matters. Not money or corporate empires or family legacies. Just people, connection, joy. But your brother is going to destroy me whether I fight back or not," Lila interrupted. "So I have a choice. I can disappear, do everything he wants, become the perfect silent heiress he can manipulate. Or I can fight, really fight, hire lawyers, contest the trust, expose what he's doing. That could get ugly. It's already ugly." She turned to face him fully, her hand still in his. "But I can't do it alone. I need people in my corner who actually care about me, not my name. And I know it's crazy. We barely know each other. I'm dragging you into a mess I have no right to ask." Ethan kissed her. He didn't plan it, didn't think about it. 1 second they were talking, and the next his hand was cupping her face and his lips were on hers and the whole world narrowed to the taste of her. The soft sound she made, the way her fingers curled into his shirt like she was afraid he'd disappear. When they broke apart, both breathing hard, Lila's eyes were wide. "I'm in your corner," Ethan said roughly. "Whatever you need. However I can help." "Why?" The question was barely a whisper. "You could walk away right now. Protect yourself and Sophie from all of this." "Because bullies don't get to win," Ethan said. "Not against Sophie, and not against you. Because you deserve to fight for what's yours. And because," he stopped, the truth catching in his throat. "Because," Lila prompted. "Because when I'm with you, I remember what it feels like to want something for myself," he admitted. "Not just for Sophie, not just to survive. Something real and terrifying and probably stupid. But I want it anyway." Lila kissed him this time, slow and sweet and full of promise. When they finally pulled apart, she was crying, but she was smiling too. "My lawyer's name is Patricia Dawson," she said. "I'm meeting with her Thursday to discuss my options. Will you come with me? I work construction until 3. I'll make it 4:30. Please, Ethan. I need someone there who's on my side, not the company's side." He should have said no. Should have recognized this for what it was, a fast track to complications he couldn't afford. But Lila was looking at him like he was her lifeline, and Ethan had never been good at walking away from people who needed him. "Okay," he said. 4:30 Thursday. Lila left an hour later, after more kisses that made Ethan's head spin and promises to call tomorrow. He watched from the window as she got into her car, a modest sedan, not the luxury vehicle he'd expected, and drove away. His phone buzzed immediately. Unknown number. Stay away from Lila Montgomery, or you'll regret it. This is your only warning. Ethan stared at the message, ice flooding his veins. Then another text arrived, this one with a photo. Sophie leaving school, completely unaware she was being photographed. The message below it read, "Beautiful daughter. Would be a shame if anything happened to her." The phone slipped from Ethan's fingers. Someone was threatening Sophie. Someone wanted him away from Lila badly enough to threaten his daughter. And suddenly, this wasn't just about corporate empires and family drama anymore. This was war. Ethan didn't sleep that night. He sat in Sophie's doorway until dawn, watching her breathe, his phone clutched in his hand and a kitchen knife on the floor beside him. Every creak of the building made him flinch. Every car door slamming outside sent adrenaline spiking through his system. Someone had photographed his daughter, had threatened her. The message was clear: back off from Lila, or Sophie pays the price. By morning, Ethan had made his decision. He waited until Sophie left for school, walked her there himself, watched her go inside, then had a quiet conversation with the principal about security protocols. Mrs. Chen agreed to pick Sophie up and keep her at the after-school program until Ethan could get there, no matter how late. He didn't tell them why. Just said there'd been some unwanted attention because of the tabloid article. Then he called Lila. "Hey," she answered, warmth in her voice. "I was just thinking about you. Last night was." "We need to talk," Ethan interrupted. "In person. Can you meet me?" The warmth evaporated. "What's wrong?" "Not over the phone. Please." They met at the same coffee shop where they'd first run into each other. Lila arrived 15 minutes later, worry etched across her face. She reached for his hand across the table, but Ethan pulled back. "Someone threatened Sophie," he said without preamble. Lila went white. "What?" He showed her the messages, watched her face crumple as she read the words, saw the photo of Sophie outside her school. "Oh my God," Lila whispered. "Ethan, I'm so sorry, I never thought. We need to call the police, get Sophie protection." The police can't do anything about a couple of text messages from a burner phone. Ethan's voice was flat, emotionless. He'd cried all his fear and rage out in the dark hours of the morning. Now he was just empty. "And I can't afford private security. I can barely afford rent." "I can," Lila said immediately. "I'll hire bodyguards for both of you, around the clock." "No, Ethan." "I said no." He finally met her eyes, and he saw her flinch at whatever she found there. "This is exactly what I was afraid of. Your world crashing into mine. I can handle tabloids and photographers and people calling me a gold digger. But the second someone threatens my daughter, we're done." "You don't mean that." Lila's voice shook. "Sophie is everything to me," Ethan said. "She's the only thing that matters. And if being with you puts her in danger, then we can't be together. It's that simple." "It's not simple." Lila's composure cracked. "You think walking away makes her safer? Whoever sent this, probably my brother, probably someone on his payroll, they don't stop just because you back off. They'll still use her to control me, to keep me in line. The only way to protect her is to fight back, to expose what James is doing." "With what?" Ethan's laugh was bitter. "You think a construction worker and a disgraced heiress can take down a corporate empire? We don't have power, Lila. We don't have resources. All we have is each other, and that's not enough. So you're just giving up?" Tears streamed down Lila's face. "After everything we said last night, after. Last night was a mistake." The words tasted like poison, but Ethan forced them out. "I got caught up in something that was never going to work. You're a Montgomery. I'm nobody. And my daughter almost got hurt because I forgot that." Lila stood abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. Other customers glanced over, but she didn't care. You're not nobody. You're the best man I've ever met. And I understand you're scared, I'm terrified too, but running from this doesn't solve anything. Maybe not, but it keeps Sophie safe, and that's all I care about. Fine. Lila's voice went cold, a defense mechanism Ethan recognized because he was doing the same thing. If that's what you want. But you're wrong about one thing. What's that? You think you're protecting her by teaching her to back down from bullies. But what you're really teaching her is that people like my brother win. That money and threats and power always beat out what's right. Lila grabbed her purse, her hands shaking. Sophie deserves better than that lesson. And so do you. She walked out, and Ethan let her go. He sat in the coffee shop for another hour, staring at nothing, feeling like he'd just amputated a part of himself. His phone buzzed constantly, Lila calling, texting, begging him to reconsider, but he ignored it all. By noon, a new text arrived from the unknown number. Smart choice. Stay away from her and your daughter stays safe. Ethan deleted it and went to work. The next 3 days were the longest of Ethan's life. He moved through his routines like a ghost. Construction during the day, Castellanos at night, taking care of Sophie in between. But everything felt muted, colorless. Sophie noticed, of course. She kept asking about Lila, when she was coming over again. Why did seemed so sad? We're not seeing her anymore, Ethan finally said on the third night. Sophie's face fell. Why not? Did you have a fight? It's complicated. Soph. That's what adults say when they don't want to explain. Sophie's eyes filled with tears. I liked her, Dad. She was nice. She made you smile. I know, baby. But sometimes people come into our lives for a little while and then they have to go. That's just how it works. That's stupid, Sophie said, and ran to her room. Ethan wanted to follow her, to explain. But how could he? How could he tell his 8-year-old that he'd pushed away someone they both cared about because he was terrified? That he'd chosen fear over love, safety over happiness? His phone rang. Jorge, have you seen the news? Jorge said without preamble. What news? Turn on Channel 7. Now. Ethan found the remote, flipped to the local news, and his blood ran cold. Lila's face filled the screen, not a candid tabloid shot, but professional footage from a press conference. She sat behind a table with an older woman in a power suit. The lawyer, probably Patricia Dawson, and she looked different. Harder. Like she'd put on armor. Calling for a full investigation into Montgomery Holdings and the alleged mismanagement by current CEO James Montgomery. Lila was saying, her voice steady despite the flashbulbs going off. I have evidence of financial irregularities, breach of fiduciary duty, and attempts to illegally seize assets from minority shareholders. I'm filing suit today to remove my brother from his position and restore proper governance to the company my grandfather built. The reporter's voice cut in. This is a stunning turn of events in the Montgomery family saga. Sources say Lila Montgomery has been gathering evidence for weeks, and today's announcement effectively declares war on her own brother. Ethan's phone exploded with notifications. News alerts, messages from co-workers, texts from people he hadn't heard from in years. Everyone wanted to know if he'd known, if he was involved, if the rumors were true that his relationship with Lila had triggered this corporate civil war. Then Michael called from Castellanos. Cole, don't come in tonight, his boss said. Or any night. You're fired. Ethan's stomach plummeted. What? Michael, I haven't done anything. Richard Thornton called. Said if we keep employing you, he'll pull his corporate accounts. That's 40% of our business. Michael sounded genuinely apologetic. I'm sorry, kid. I can't afford to lose that kind of money. The line went dead. Ethan stood in his living room, watching Lila on TV declare war on her family, and felt his life disintegrating around him. Within an hour, it got worse. Danny from the construction site called next. Cole, we have to let you go. Got a call from some lawyer saying you're part of a lawsuit, that employing you creates liability issues. I don't know what you got yourself into, but I'm not part of any lawsuit. Doesn't matter. Company can't take the risk. I'll mail your final check. Both jobs. Gone. Just like that. Ethan sank onto the couch, his mind reeling. Rent was due in 2 weeks. Sophie's after-school care cost $300 a month. He had maybe $800 in savings, not even enough to cover 1 month's expenses, let alone however long it would take to find new work. And now that his face was all over the news as Lila Montgomery's mystery man, who would hire him? He was toxic, contaminated by association with a family in meltdown. I want to pause right here and ask you something real. Have you ever felt like your whole world was falling apart at once? Drop a comment and let me know. Sometimes we just need to know we're not alone in the struggle. And if these stories speak to you, hit that subscribe button. We're almost to the resolution, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. The worst came that evening. Ethan picked up Sophie from the after-school program, holding her hand as they walked the 3 blocks home. He was so lost in his spiraling thoughts, how to tell her they might lose the apartment, how to find new jobs, how to fix this nightmare, that he didn't notice the black SUV until it pulled up alongside them. The window rolled down. A man in an expensive suit smiled out at them. Cold, calculated, predatory. "Ethan Cole," the man said pleasantly. "I'm James Montgomery. I believe you know my sister." Every protective instinct Ethan had roared to life. He pulled Sophie behind him, his body a shield. "What do you want?" "Just a conversation." James's eyes flickered to Sophie, and Ethan's blood ran ice cold. Cute kid. She's what? 7? 8? Must be hard, raising her alone. All those expenses, all those responsibilities. Easy to make bad decisions when you're desperate. "Stay away from my daughter." "I'm not threatening anyone, Mr. Cole. Just making observations." James's smile widened. "My sister has made some very poor choices lately. That press conference this afternoon? Career suicide. She'll lose everything, her reputation, her inheritance, her freedom when the board has her committed for psychological evaluation." "You're insane." "No, I'm practical. And I'm offering you a chance to be practical too." James pulled out an envelope, held it out the window. $50,000. "All you have to do is make a statement to the press that Lila pursued you inappropriately, that she was erratic and unstable, that you're concerned for her mental health. Back up my narrative, and you walk away with enough money to change your life." Ethan stared at the envelope like it was a snake. "You want me to lie about her? Help you destroy her?" "I want you to tell a version of the truth. She did pursue you. She is acting erratically. You'd just be a concerned citizen sharing his experience." James shrugged. "And in return, you get financial security. Sophie gets a real home, good schools, opportunities. All you have to do is throw Lila under the bus, which, let's be honest, is where she's headed anyway. Why not benefit from the inevitable?" Sophie tugged Ethan's hand. "Dad? I'm scared." The fear in her voice made Ethan's decision crystallize. He looked James Montgomery dead in the eye and said, "Go to hell." James's pleasant expression evaporated. "Wrong answer. I don't care how much money you have or how many lawyers you've got. I'm not helping you hurt Lila." Ethan's voice was steel. "Now get away from my daughter before I call the cops." "Call them." James's smile returned, shark-like. "I'll just tell them how you've been harassing my sister. I've got witnesses, documentation, everything I need to make your life a living hell. You think losing 2 jobs is bad? I can make sure you never work again. Can make sure Sophie gets taken away for neglect when you can't afford to feed her. You're threatening to take my daughter." Ethan's vision went red. "I'm explaining consequences. Walk away from Lila, keep your mouth shut, and you can rebuild your little life. Keep playing hero, and I'll destroy you so thoroughly you'll wish you'd taken the money." James rolled up the window, and the SUV pulled away, leaving Ethan shaking with rage and terror on the sidewalk. Sophie was crying. Ethan picked her up even though she was too big for it, held her while she sobbed against his shoulder. "I want to go home," she whimpered. "I want Lila. I want everything to be okay again." "I know, baby. I know." But Ethan didn't know how to make anything okay. He'd pushed Lila away to protect Sophie, and now they were both more vulnerable than ever. He'd lost his jobs, his income, his stability. And James Montgomery had just made it clear he'd stop at nothing to win. That night, after Sophie finally cried herself to sleep, Ethan sat at his kitchen table and stared at the bills he couldn't pay. The eviction notice would come in 3 weeks, maybe 4 if he was lucky. After that, he and Sophie would be homeless. He tried to do the right thing. Tried to protect his daughter. Tried to stay out of a war he couldn't win. And he'd lost everything anyway. His phone lit up with a new message. From Lila. "I saw James's car on your street. Security footage from a neighbor. Are you and Sophie okay? Please, Ethan. Let me help. Let me protect you the way you protected me." Ethan's finger hovered over the screen. He could type back, could accept her help, could let himself fall into the fantasy that they could fight this together and win. But James's threat echoed in his mind. "I can make sure Sophie gets taken away." Child Protective Services would love a case like this. Single father, no job, associating with a woman in the middle of a very public mental health scandal. They could take Sophie, put her in foster care, and Ethan would be powerless to stop it. He couldn't risk it. Couldn't risk losing the only thing that mattered. He typed, "We're fine. Please stop contacting me. I mean it. Lila. Stay away from us." Then he blocked her number. And Ethan Cole, the man who'd spent his whole life fighting for what was right, finally broke. He put his head on the table and sobbed. The eviction notice came on Monday morning. Ethan stared at the paper taped to his door, the words blurring together. Failure to pay rent, 30 days to vacate, legal action. He'd known it was coming. Had even prepared Sophie, in vague terms, that they might need to find a new place. But seeing it in writing made it real in a way that hollowed out his chest. "Dad." Sophie stood behind him in her school uniform, her backpack already on. "What's that paper?" "Nothing, Soph. Let's get you to school." The walk was quiet. Sophie hadn't been herself since the incident with James Montgomery. Nightmares every night, clingy during the day, her usual brightness dimmed. Ethan was failing her. Failing at the one job that actually mattered. "Mr. Cole." The principal, Mrs. Harrison, intercepted them at the school entrance. "Could I have a word?" Ethan's stomach dropped. "Sophie, go to class. I'll be right there to sign you in." When Sophie was out of earshot, Mrs. Harrison's professional smile faded to genuine concern. "I wanted to let you know that someone's been asking questions about Sophie. A private investigator, I think. Wanting to know about her attendance, her behavior, whether there are any concerns about her home life." The world tilted. "What did you tell them?" "That Sophie is a wonderful student from a loving home, and any questions about her welfare should go through proper CPS channels." Mrs. Harrison paused. "But Mr. Cole, if someone's building a case, you should prepare yourself. Get a lawyer if you can." "With what money?" Ethan wanted to scream. Instead, he thanked her and somehow made it through signing Sophie in without falling apart. He was walking back to the apartment, nowhere else to go, no job to rush to, when a car pulled up beside him. Not an SUV this time. A modest sedan. "Lila. Don't," Ethan said without stopping. "I blocked you for a reason." "I know. I'm respecting that. But you need to hear this." Lila got out of the car, and Ethan's breath caught. She looked exhausted, dark circles under her eyes, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, wearing the same sweater she'd worn to dinner at his apartment a lifetime ago. "James is building a CPS case against you. I have sources on the board, and someone talked. He's going to report you as an unfit parent." "I know. The school warned me." "Ethan, please, let me help. I have lawyers who specialize in family law. I can get you protection." "With what credibility?" Ethan finally stopped, turned to face her. You're in the middle of a public war with your brother. Half the news outlets are calling you unstable. How does associating with you help my case to keep Sophie? Lila flinched like he'd struck her. So that's it? You're just giving up? Letting James win? I'm keeping my daughter. The words exploded out of him. That's all I've ever been trying to do. And every time I get close to you, I lose something else. My jobs, my apartment, my peace of mind. Soon it'll be Sophie, and I won't. He's going to take her anyway. Lila's voice cracked. Don't you see? James doesn't make empty threats. If he's started a CPS investigation, he'll see it through. He'll manufacture evidence, pay off witnesses, whatever it takes. Running from me doesn't save you. It just means you'll face him alone. Better alone than dragging Sophie into a war. She's already in the war. Lila grabbed his arm, desperate. We both are, and the only way out is through. Together. Ethan pulled away. I can't trust that. Every time I've trusted someone, they've left. My parents, my wife, every person who said they'd help and then disappeared when things got hard. Why would you be different? Because I love you. The words hung in the air between them, raw and unexpected. Lila's eyes widened like she hadn't meant to say it, but she pressed on. I know it's too soon and too complicated and probably crazy, but I love you. And I love Sophie. And I'm not leaving, no matter how hard you push me away. Ethan's carefully constructed walls cracked. You can't love me. You barely know me. I know you risked your job to help a stranger. I know you've raised an incredible daughter alone and made her feel loved despite having nothing. I know you're terrified right now but still trying to do the right thing. Lila's voice softened. I know that when you kiss me, I feel like I can breathe for the first time in years. That's enough. It's not enough to fight James Montgomery. No, a new voice said. But this might be. They both turned. Patricia Dawson, Lila's lawyer, stood on the sidewalk holding a briefcase. She looked like she'd just stepped out of a courtroom. Power suit, perfectly styled gray hair, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. I've been trying to reach you, Mr. Cole, Patricia said. But you blocked Lila's number, and you don't exactly have a public email address. How did you find me? Ethan asked. I'm very good at my job. Patricia's smile was all teeth. And right now, my job is taking down James Montgomery. I'd like you to be part of that. I can't. Hear me out, please. Patricia opened her briefcase, pulled out a folder. James made a mistake. Several, actually. In his haste to discredit Lila and control the company, he's left a paper trail. Forged documents, illegal wire transfers, bribery. I have evidence of all of it. Ethan's pulse quickened despite himself. Then why do you need me? Because corporate fraud is hard to prosecute. Juries get bored, defendants can afford the best lawyers, cases drag on for years. But you know what plays well? Patricia's eyes glinted. A sympathetic victim. A single father who James threatened and tried to bribe. A man who can testify that James Montgomery photographed his 8-year-old daughter and used her as leverage. You want me to testify against him. I want you to bury him. Patricia handed Ethan the folder. These are transcripts from the text messages you received. I had a forensic tech trace them back to a phone purchased by Montgomery Holdings Security Division. That's conspiracy, witness intimidation, and stalking a minor. Combined with the financial crimes, we can get James removed from the company and potentially put in prison. Ethan stared at the documents, his mind reeling. This could actually work. It will work, but only if you're willing to fight. Patricia glanced at Lila. Both of you. Lila stepped closer to Ethan, hope and fear warring in her expression. I know you're scared. I know you think protecting Sophie means running. But James thrives on people being too afraid to stand up to him. He's counting on you backing down. And if we fight and lose? If he takes Sophie anyway? Then we appeal. We fight harder. We don't stop fighting until we win. Lila's hand found his, tentative. But here's the thing, Ethan. You're not alone anymore. You have me. You have Patricia. And you have something James doesn't. What's that? People who actually care about you. As if summoned, another car pulled up. Jorge got out, followed by Mrs. Chen from Sophie's after-school program, then Danny from the construction site, then half a dozen other people, co-workers from Castellanos, neighbors from Ethan's building, even Mrs. Harrison from Sophie's school. What? Ethan's voice failed. Jorge clapped him on the shoulder. You think we didn't notice you disappearing? Looking like death? That pendejo Montgomery threatened my friend. Nobody threatens my friend. We've all dealt with powerful people trying to push us around, Mrs. Chen added. People who think money means they can do whatever they want. It's time someone stood up to them. I called in a few favors, Lila said quietly. Asked people who care about you if they'd be willing to help. Turns out you've spent years helping everyone else. Ethan. They're ready to return the favor. Danny stepped forward, looking sheepish. Look, I'm sorry I fired you. Company pressure and all that. But I talked to the union rep what that lawyer did, calling and threatening liability. That might be illegal interference. We're filing a complaint. Might not get your job back, but it'll make Montgomery Holdings think twice about pulling that crap again. And I spoke with CPS, Mrs. Harrison said. Explained that any investigation into Sophie's welfare is being driven by a personal vendetta, not genuine concern. They're aware of the situation. That doesn't mean James can't cause problems, but it means you'll get a fair hearing. We also started a GoFundMe, one of the Castellanos waiters added. For your rent and expenses. It's already at $8,000. Ethan's vision blurred. You all did this? For me. You saved my job when I got caught giving food to homeless people, Jorge said. Told Michael it was your idea, took the write-up yourself. You tutored my daughter through her senior year math when we couldn't afford a tutor, Mrs. Chen added. She's at community college now because of you. You worked double shifts so Rodriguez could take his kid to chemo appointments, Danny said. Didn't ask for anything in return. Just did it. One by one, they shared stories, small kindnesses Ethan had forgotten, moments when he'd helped without thinking about payback. And now they were here, a wall of support he'd never expected. Real talk, beautiful people. This right here is what community looks like. When's the last time someone showed up for you when you needed them most? Share your story in the comments, and if this is hitting you right in the feels, smash that subscribe button. We're heading into the final battle, and you don't want to miss it. Lila squeezed his hand. You're not alone, Ethan. You never were. You just couldn't see it. Patricia cleared her throat. This is very touching, but we have a deposition scheduled for tomorrow morning. James's lawyers are pushing for an emergency board meeting to have Lila declared incompetent. We need to move fast. What do you need from me? Ethan asked, his voice steady for the first time in days. Your testimony about the threats. Documentation of everything you've lost because of James's interference. And your willingness to stand in front of a judge and tell the truth. Patricia's expression softened slightly. I won't lie to you, Mr. Cole. This will be hard. James will come at you with everything he has. He'll dig up every mistake you've ever made, twist every word, try to make you look like an opportunist or a liar. Can you handle that? Ethan thought about Sophie, sleeping fitfully every night because strange men had photographed her. Thought about Lila, fighting alone against her own family while Ethan hid behind his fear. Thought about all the people standing on this sidewalk who'd shown up because he'd shown up for them. I can handle it, he said. What do we do first? Patricia's smile was predatory. First, we file criminal charges against James for witness intimidation and stalking. That'll freeze him, force him to play defense. Then we move for an emergency injunction to prevent him from accessing company funds until the investigation is complete. By the time his lawyers figure out what's happening, we'll have control of the narrative. And what about Sophie? Ethan asked. How do I keep her safe during all this? You let me hire professional security, Lila said firmly. Not up for debate. Round-the-clock protection for both of you until James is neutralized. And before you argue about pride or independence or whatever, this isn't charity. This is me protecting the people I love. There was that word again. Love. Ethan looked at Lila, really looked at her. Exhausted, determined, standing on a sidewalk with a ragtag group of working-class people who had nothing in common with her billion-dollar world except that they all cared about him. Okay, he said. I'm in. We fight. Lila's smile was sunrise breaking through storm clouds. She threw her arms around him, and Ethan held her like maybe this time. Finally, he'd found someone who wouldn't leave. We should celebrate, Jorge announced. Who wants coffee? My treat. Actually, Patricia said, checking her watch, we should prep Mr. Cole for tomorrow's deposition. Time is not on our side. The group started to disperse, but not before everyone offered final words of encouragement. Phone numbers, promises to help however they could. Ethan watched them go, feeling something he'd almost forgotten. Hope. Thank you, he said to Lila as they walked toward Patricia's car. For not giving up on me, even when I gave up on myself. I told you, Lila said, lacing her fingers through his. I'm not going anywhere. You're stuck with me, Cole. I can think of worse fates. Oh, you're going to be so sorry when you meet the rest of my family, Lila laughed. My Aunt Victoria makes James look reasonable. Can't wait. As they drove to Patricia's office to prepare for battle, Ethan felt the weight that had been crushing him for days start to lift. He was still scared, terrified, actually. James Montgomery had unlimited resources and zero conscience. The fight ahead would be brutal. But Ethan wasn't alone anymore. And that changed everything. His phone buzzed. A text from Sophie's school. Sophie asked Mrs. Chen to tell you she loves you and she's proud of you. Also, she wants mac and cheese for dinner. Mrs. Harrison. Ethan smiled, his heart full to bursting. Yeah, he could do this. For Sophie. For Lila. For everyone who'd shown up when it mattered. He could face James Montgomery and win. The deposition room was smaller than Ethan expected. He'd imagined something like a courtroom. Imposing, formal, designed to intimidate. Instead, it was just a conference room in Patricia's law office, with a long table, uncomfortable chairs, and fluorescent lights that made everyone look vaguely ill. James Montgomery sat across from him, flanked by 3 lawyers in suits that probably cost more than Ethan's car. James looked calm, almost bored, like this was a minor inconvenience in his busy schedule. Let's begin, Patricia said, her voice crisp. She sat beside Ethan, a stack of folders in front of her. Lila sat behind them in the gallery seats, her presence a steady anchor. Mr. Montgomery, you're here to answer questions under oath regarding your conduct toward my clients, Lila Montgomery and Ethan Cole. Do you understand? I understand this is a waste of everyone's time, James said smoothly. My sister is having a breakdown, and she's dragged this unfortunate man into her delusions. I'm here as a courtesy. How thoughtful. Patricia's smile could have cut steel. Mr. Montgomery, are you familiar with this phone number? She slid a document across the table. James barely glanced at it. I have dozens of phones for various purposes. I can't be expected to memorize every number. This particular phone was used to send threatening text messages to Mr. Cole. Messages that included a photograph of his 8-year-old daughter and an explicit threat to her safety. I know nothing about that. Really? Because this phone was purchased by Montgomery Holdings Security Division on your authorization. We have the purchase order with your digital signature. Patricia slid another document across. And the cell tower data shows this phone was in the same location as your personal phone when these messages were sent. Quite a coincidence. James's jaw tightened, but his voice stayed level. Anyone could have accessed that phone. Security keeps multiple devices for various corporate purposes, including photographing and threatening children. I didn't threaten anyone. Ethan had been silent until now, watching James lie with practiced ease. But something inside him snapped. You pulled up next to me and my daughter in an SUV, he said quietly. You offered me $50,000 to lie about Lila. When I refused, you threatened to have Sophie taken away. You looked my 8-year-old daughter in the eye and told me you'd make sure I never saw her again. James turned to him, and for the first time, Ethan saw genuine emotion, contempt. You're a nobody playing in a world you don't understand. Did Lila promise you money? A better life? Whatever she offered, it's not worth it. She's going to lose everything, and she'll take you down with her. Is that a threat, Mr. Montgomery? Patricia asked. Because we're recording this. James sat back, composure reassembling. It's a prediction. Lila has always been unstable. Our father indulged her, let her pretend she had a role in the company. But the truth is she's not competent to manage her own affairs, let alone a billion-dollar corporation. The board agrees. That's why they're voting tomorrow to place her shares in a conservatorship. A conservatorship you control, Lila said from behind them, her voice sharp. How convenient. Someone has to protect you from yourself, James said, not even looking at her. Making wild accusations, holding press conferences based on documents you don't understand, associating with people who are clearly using you. What documents don't I understand, James? Lila stood, walked to the table. Patricia tried to stop her, but Lila waved her off. The ones showing you've been siphoning money from the employee pension fund? The emails where you discussed bribing city officials for building permits? Or maybe the contract you signed selling our grandfather's properties to shell corporations you secretly own? James's mask slipped for just a second. You have no proof of any of that. Actually, we do. Patricia opened one of her folders. Your former assistant, Rebecca Chen, provided us with extensive documentation. Emails, financial records, recorded phone conversations. She's been cooperating with federal investigators for 6 months. The color drained from James's face. Rebecca wouldn't. She signed an NDA. NDAs don't protect criminal activity, Patricia said pleasantly. Ms. Chen came to us after you asked her to forge Lila's signature on documents transferring her shares. She was uncomfortable committing fraud, so she recorded your instructions. Would you like to hear the recording? The room went silent. James's lawyers huddled, whispering urgently. James himself looked like he'd been punched. This is entrapment, he finally said. Illegal evidence. It's neither. Ms. Chen recorded her own conversations in a one-party consent state, and she volunteered the information. Patricia leaned forward. Here's what's going to happen, Mr. Montgomery. In approximately, she checked her watch, 15 minutes, federal agents will arrive at Montgomery Holdings with warrants to seize your computers and financial records. The SEC has opened an investigation into your activities. The district attorney is reviewing charges for fraud, embezzlement, and witness intimidation. You're bluffing. Am I? Patricia pulled out her phone, turned it so James could see the screen. A news alert, breaking, federal investigation into Montgomery Holdings CEO James Montgomery. James grabbed for the phone, but his lawyer caught his arm. Don't say another word, the lawyer hissed. We're done here. Actually, we're not quite done. Lila's voice was ice. She pulled out her own folder, slid a single document across to James. This is a letter signed by 70% of Montgomery Holdings board members. As of this morning, you've been removed as CEO pending the investigation. I've been appointed interim CEO with full authority to manage company operations. James stared at the letter like it was written in a foreign language. That's impossible. The board supports me. I have the votes. You had the votes when they thought you were competent. When they found out you've been using company resources to stalk and threaten private citizens, they changed their minds. Lila's smile was cold. Turns out board members don't like the liability of a CEO who commits felonies. You planned this, James said, realization dawning. The press conference, the lawsuit, it was all a distraction. You were never trying to fight me publicly. You were gathering evidence. I learned from the best, Lila said. You taught me that the person who controls the information controls the outcome. So I made you think I was having a breakdown, acting erratically, while Patricia and I built an airtight case against you. Every threat you made, every illegal move, we documented all of it. With my help, a new voice said. Everyone turned. Rebecca Chen stood in the doorway, a woman in her 50s with steel-gray hair and determined eyes. I worked for James for 12 years. Watched him lie, cheat, and destroy people without remorse. When he asked me to forge Lila's signature, I knew I had to do something. Rebecca, James said, and for the first time, he sounded uncertain. They are manipulating you. Whatever they promised. They promised me immunity and witness protection. But that's not why I did it. Rebecca walked to the table, looked James dead in the eye. I did it because you tried to steal from the pension fund. My pension. The pensions of everyone who's worked for Montgomery Holdings for decades. You were going to retire on our money while we lost everything. I was moving assets to protect the company. You were stealing. Rebecca's voice cracked. And I won't let you destroy what Mr. Montgomery, the real Mr. Montgomery, your grandfather, spent his life building. The door opened again. 2 federal agents in dark suits entered, badges displayed. James Montgomery, we have a warrant for your arrest. Everything happened fast after that. James's lawyers erupted in protests. The agents read James his rights while he sat frozen, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. Patricia calmly packed up her documents, looking like a general who just won a decisive battle. Ethan watched it all in a daze, barely believing it was real. Mr. Cole. One of the agents approached him. We'll need your full statement about the threats you received. And we'll want to talk to your daughter, with you present, about the photograph. Child endangerment charges. Whatever you need, Ethan said. As the agents led James toward the door, the disgraced CEO stopped, turned back to look at Lila. This isn't over, he said. You think you've won, but running a company isn't playing dress-up. You'll fail, and when you do. When I do, I'll handle it, Lila interrupted. Because that's what leaders do, James. They take responsibility instead of blaming everyone else. You should try it sometime. James's face twisted with rage, but the agents pulled him away before he could respond. The door closed. Silence fell. Then Lila's composure shattered. She sank into a chair, her whole body shaking. Oh my God. We actually did it. We actually. Ethan was there in an instant, pulling her into his arms. She clung to him, laughing and crying at the same time. You were incredible, he whispered. Absolutely incredible. I was terrified, Lila admitted. The whole time, I kept thinking he'd find a way out, that the board wouldn't support me, that. But they did. You did. Ethan pulled back to look at her. You just took down your own brother to save your family's company. And you protected me and Sophie in the process. Patricia cleared her throat delicately. I hate to interrupt, but we should discuss next steps. The board will expect a statement, the press will have questions, and we need to secure the company's assets before James's lawyers start filing motions. Can it wait until tomorrow? Lila asked. Please, Patricia. Just one night to breathe. Patricia's stern expression softened. One night. But tomorrow, we hit the ground running. You're CEO of $1 billion company in crisis, Lila. The easy part is over. After Patricia left to coordinate with the federal agents, Ethan and Lila sat alone in the conference room. Outside, the Seattle skyline glittered in the late afternoon sun. What happens now? Ethan asked. For us, I mean. Lila took his hand, laced their fingers together. I don't know. I'm about to be incredibly busy trying to fix everything James broke. The company's a mess, the board is fractured, and I have approximately zero experience actually running things. She paused. But I know I want you in my life. However that works, whatever that looks like. If you still want that. Are you kidding? I just watched you destroy a corporate empire and rebuild it in the same afternoon. You think I'm walking away from that? Lila laughed. When you put it that way. Besides, Sophie would never forgive me if I let you go. She's already planning the wedding. She's 8. She's very advanced for her age. They sat there as the sun set, two people from completely different worlds who'd found each other in the chaos. There would be challenges ahead, media scrutiny, the demands of Lila's new role, the complicated process of building a life together. But for now, in this moment, they just held each other and breathed. Ethan's phone buzzed. A text from Mrs. Chen. Sophie says to tell you she's not worried anymore because you and Lila are superheroes. Also, can we have pizza for dinner? She's very insistent about the pizza. He showed Lila the message, and her smile lit up the room. Pizza sounds perfect, she said. Think there's room for one more at dinner. Always, Ethan said. And he meant it. 6 months later. The Montgomery Holdings boardroom had floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking Elliott Bay, the kind of view that reminded people why Seattle was worth the rain. Ethan stood at those windows, still not quite believing he was allowed to be here. You're doing it again, Lila said from behind him. Doing what? Looking uncomfortable in a place you absolutely belong. She crossed the room, slid her arms around his waist. Even in her power suit and heels, CEO armor, she called it, she still fit perfectly against him. You know you're allowed to be here, right? You work here. As a consultant, Ethan said. Big difference between consultant and, he gestured vaguely at the opulent room. You're director of community outreach, Lila corrected. A position I created specifically because you're brilliant at connecting with people and understanding what communities actually need. Last month's housing initiative? That was all you. It still felt surreal. After James's arrest, after the dust settled and Lila took control of Montgomery Holdings, she'd offered Ethan a job. Not charity, a real position overseeing the company's community development projects. Using his construction experience and his understanding of working-class struggles to make sure Montgomery Holdings actually helped the neighborhoods it built in, instead of displacing them. The pay was more than his 2 previous jobs combined. Enough that he'd moved Sophie into a real house with a yard. Enough that he could breathe without constantly calculating which bills to pay first. The housing initiative was a team effort, Ethan said. You're terrible at taking credit. Lila kissed his cheek. It's annoyingly endearing. How's the board meeting looking? Lila's expression clouded slightly. Aunt Victoria is still pushing back on the environmental regulations. And Richard Thornton's replacement keeps trying to resurrect the merger idea, just with different terms. She sighed. Running a company is exactly as exhausting as I feared. But you're amazing at it. I'm adequate at it. There's a difference. Lila turned in his arms, looked up at him. But I have good people around me. Patricia keeps the lawyers honest. Rebecca knows where all the bodies are buried. And you, she touched his face. You remind me why I'm doing this. That it's not about profit margins and stock prices. It's about people. The boardroom door opened. Patricia stuck her head in. They're ready for you, Lila. And Ethan, there's a small person in the lobby who's very insistent about seeing her father. Ethan checked his watch. 3:30 already. That's my cue. Good luck with Aunt Victoria. I'm going to need it, Lila muttered. He kissed her, a real kiss, the kind that still made his heart race after 6 months, and headed for the elevators. As the doors closed, he caught a glimpse of Lila straightening her shoulders, putting on her CEO face, ready to do battle with a boardroom full of people who still underestimated her. They learned eventually. Lila Montgomery was a force of nature. Sophie sat in the lobby, backpack at her feet, reading A Wrinkle in Time. She'd moved on from Bridge to Terabithia, had cried exactly as hard as Ethan expected at the ending, and was now on a science fiction kick. Hey, kiddo, Ethan said. How was school? Excellent. Sophie jumped up, grabbed his hand. Mrs. Harrison said my essay on economic inequality was remarkably sophisticated for a 3rd grader. And Tommy Brennan apologized for being mean about you and Lila. He did. Well, his mom made him. But still. Sophie bounced as they walked to the car, a used Honda, because Ethan refused to let Lila buy him anything flashier. Can we stop at the bookstore? Lila said there's a new book about women scientists I'd like. When did Lila say that? She texted me this morning. We have a book club now. Just the two of us. Ethan's chest tightened with emotion. Over the past 6 months, watching Lila and Sophie's relationship grow had been one of the greatest joys of his life. Lila had never tried to replace Sophie's mother. Rachel sent birthday cards now, occasionally, from whatever spiritual journey she was on, but she'd become something equally important. A friend. A mentor. A person Sophie trusted completely. Yeah, we can stop at the bookstore, Ethan said. They picked up the book, Women in Science, 50 Fearless Pioneers, and grabbed ice cream because Sophie's essay deserved celebrating. By the time they got home, the Seattle drizzle had started, turning the world soft and gray. Home. Ethan still wasn't used to that word applying to the 3-bedroom house in a quiet neighborhood with good schools. Sophie's room had built-in bookshelves now, painted the exact shade of purple she'd always wanted. The yard had a garden where they grew tomatoes and sunflowers. There was space to breathe. Is Lila coming for dinner? Sophie asked, already knowing the answer. She'll be here around 7. Board meeting ran long. Can I make dessert? I want to practice my baking skills. As long as you clean up after. Sophie was elbow-deep in cookie dough when Lila arrived, looking exhausted but triumphant. Aunt Victoria caved on the environmental regulations, she announced. And I got Richard's replacement to back off on the merger. Victory is mine. That's my girl, Ethan said, pulling her in for a kiss. You, Dad, we're making cookies here. Sophie protested, but she was grinning. They ate dinner together, real dinner, not rushed meals grabbed between shifts, and Sophie told Lila all about her essay while Lila listened like it was the most important presentation she'd heard all day. After Sophie went to bed, Ethan and Lila curled up on the couch, her head on his shoulder, the rain pattering against the windows. I have something to tell you, Lila said quietly. Ethan's stomach clenched. That sounds ominous. It's not bad. At least, I hope it's not. She sat up, turned to face him. The board wants me to go to New York for 3 months. There's a subsidiary company that's struggling, and they need hands-on management to turn it around. 3 months. I know. It's a long time, but it's important for establishing my credibility, showing I can handle crisis management. Lila took his hand. I told them I'd only go if you and Sophie came with me. Ethan's breath caught. You want us to move to New York? For 3 months. I want you with me, wherever I go. Lila's voice trembled slightly. I know it's asking a lot. Sophie would have to switch schools temporarily, and you'd have to leave your job, though you could work remotely, and the New York office could use your expertise. Yes, Ethan said. And I'd understand if you needed time to think about it. Or if it's too much too fast. Wait, what? I said yes. Ethan cupped her face. 6 months ago, I was terrified of letting you into my life. Terrified you'd leave, or that I'd lose everything trying to be part of your world. But you've shown me, every single day that you're in this. That you love me and Sophie not despite our messy, complicated life, but because of it. Lila's eyes filled with tears. So yeah, Ethan continued. We'll go to New York. We'll go anywhere you need to go. Because we're a team now. The 3 of us. The 3 of us, Lila echoed. I like the sound of that. She kissed him, and it tasted like promises and new beginnings and everything Ethan had been too afraid to hope for. 1 year later, the Montgomery Estate Gardens were transformed for the occasion. White flowers everywhere, chairs arranged in neat rows, an archway covered in sunflowers because Sophie had insisted. The guest list was an eclectic mix. Seattle's elite sitting beside construction workers and restaurant staff, board members chatting with after-school program coordinators. Jorge adjusted Ethan's tie for the 3rd time. You look good, Hermano. Very fancy. I feel like I'm going to throw up, Ethan admitted. That's normal. I threw up at my wedding. Twice. That's not helpful, Jorge. Danny clapped him on the shoulder. You're marrying a billionaire CEO who looks at you like you hung the moon. Stop overthinking it. The music started. Everyone stood. And then Sophie appeared at the end of the aisle in her flower girl dress, carrying a basket of sunflower petals and looking so grown up that Ethan's eyes stung. She walked down the aisle with perfect precision, then stopped at the front row and stage whispered loud enough for everyone to hear, "Dad, don't cry yet. You're supposed to wait until you see Lila." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Ethan laughed too, wiping his eyes. Then the music changed, and Lila appeared. She wore a simple dress, no veil, her hair loose around her shoulders. No designer gown or elaborate setup, just Lila, looking at him like he was her whole world. Ethan stopped breathing. She walked down the aisle alone. Her father was in prison with James. Her mother had declined to attend, but she wasn't alone. Because halfway down, Sophie darted from her seat and grabbed Lila's hand, walking with her the rest of the way. When they reached the archway, Sophie announced, "I'm giving Lila to my dad. Because they both need each other." "That's not how it works, kiddo," Ethan whispered. "It is now," Sophie said firmly, then sat down. The ceremony was short, personal, perfect. They wrote their own vows. Lila promised to always make room for mini marshmallows and terrible dad jokes. Ethan promised to remind her that she was more than her last name or her company. They promised to build a life together, messy and imperfect and real. When the officiant said, "You may kiss," Ethan pulled Lila close and kissed her like he'd been waiting his whole life to do it. Which, in a way, he had. At the reception, Sophie gave a speech. "When I was little," she said into the microphone, "way too confident for a 9-year-old, I used to wish for a mom. But I'm glad I didn't get one right away, because I got to see my dad be both parents." And then Lila came, and she didn't try to replace anyone. She just added more love. Which is better? There wasn't a dry eye in the house. Later, as Ethan and Lila danced under the stars, she whispered, "Thank you." "For what?" "For not deleting my friend request permanently. For giving me a chance. For teaching me that real love isn't about grand gestures or perfect circumstances. It's about showing up. Every day. Even when it's hard." "Especially when it's hard," Ethan agreed. Sophie ran past, chasing Jorge's daughter through the gardens, her laughter echoing in the night. The band played. Friends and family celebrated around them. And Ethan held his wife, and thought about the night he'd helped a stranger escape a bad date. One small act of kindness. That's all it had taken to change everything. "What are you thinking?" Lila asked. "That I'm the luckiest man alive," Ethan said. "That's my line. We can share." She laughed, and they kept dancing, two people who'd found each other in the chaos and built something beautiful from the wreckage. The future stretched ahead, full of challenges and adventures, New York projects and Seattle homecomings, board meetings and soccer games and family dinners. It wouldn't always be easy, but it would be theirs. And that was more than enough. We have come to the end of the story. If this story touched your heart, tell us where you're watching from in the comments below. Also, don't forget to like, subscribe, and turn on the notification bell so you won't miss our subsequent heartwarming stories.